it's going to be an issue of mobilization. And I think Trump will have perhaps some trouble mobilizing the whole of his Republican and conservative base, but Biden also will have trouble in that regard. And so we've got a long, complicated, and frankly, pretty frustrating race ahead of us.
And we're going to have to leave it there. And Nikki Haley is pouring money into new ads where she refers to the Trump-Biden nightmare. John Nichols, the nation's national affairs correspondent, speaking to us from Wisconsin, just back from Iowa. I'm Amy Goodman with Juan Gonzalez for another edition of Democracy Now!
The viewpoints expressed in this program are the opinions of the people expressing them and are not necessarily those of Fresh Air Incorporated, its staff, or its board of directors.
Hi, this is Al McFarland, host of The Conversation with Al McFarland. You're listening to 90.3 FM, KFAI, Minneapolis. I'm Al McFarland. Welcome to The Conversation with Al McFarland. I'm glad to be here, glad to have you along as well. This was the first show of The Conversation that's live since the beginning of the new year. So with that, I say to you here at KFAI and through our social media platforms, Happy New Year. I hope you had a wonderful holiday season. And I look forward, and I think you look forward as well, to an exciting and productive 2024. It'll be a challenging year on all fronts. I'm sure of that. So much is happening, and we want to jump into that today in a couple of particular areas that we think are of value. But of course, we want to also reflect on the importance of yesterday, January 15th, and our state's celebration of the life and the work, the meaning of the work of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, and what we have to do, what we must do as community, as a state, as neighbors, to continue to focus on fulfilling the vision of respecting dignity, humanity, and potential for each and every human being. Well, with that, let me also invite you to support this program by sharing, liking, and subscribing. Subscribe to The Conversation with Al McFarland on YouTube, YouTube Insight News MN. Well, let me begin with my first guest today. I read last month about a strike or potential strike that was happening for Sun Country Airlines, and I invited Elaine Rishovd and her colleague. Elaine is a 29-year flight attendant of Sun Country Airlines, and she's currently the Teamsters chief steward and negotiator for the Sun Country flight attendant members. She's here with her colleague, Tanya DeVito. And Tanya says she spent over half of her life working as a flight attendant for Sun Country Airlines. In December, she says she completed 32 years of service. Tanya and Elaine, welcome to The Conversation. How are you both?
Thank you, Al. Thank you for inviting us. We're good. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm bundled up because my heater isn't quite working. I'm waiting on the service guy from Centerpoint. If he comes during this show, I'll have one of you help me out by keeping talking while I go let him in and keep going from there. But I'm doing well, and Minnesota winters excite me. Anything can happen, and anything has happened. But let's talk about Sun Country. I want to say first, thank you both for what you do, for the profession that you represent, the service you provide to the customers of Sun Country. And I believe, because I have been and was a consistent and loyal and ongoing customer for Sun Country, traveling to Jamaica several times a year, from way back when you started Jamaica, Minneapolis. I use Sun Country for, I think, maybe New York a lot as well. So I've been a customer and a satisfied customer, and I appreciate the difficulty and the importance, the value of the work that you do as flight attendants. So Elaine, let me start with you. What are the issues on the table right now? When I read the story, it caught my eye as a passenger. And my immediate thought is, these guys do important work. What's going on? That's why I called you.
We are working under a 2014 contract. That 2014 contract was amendable in December of 2019. And we did start negotiations in the fall of 2019. And as we all know, business kind of halted because of the pandemic in 2020. So we stopped negotiations in March of 2020. We resumed those negotiations in October of 2021. And we have negotiated up through that time until we did bring our members a tentative agreement in May of 2023, which was voted down by an overwhelmingly 96%. And now we are in mediation. We have started our mediation, and our first session was in December. Our next session now will not be until February. And we're looking for a fair contract. Every time we have gone to the table, they have said, we know you've sacrificed for us. We will make it right this time. Well, they didn't even bother to say that this time, even though we saved them over $4 million during the pandemic. We took leaves. We were the labor group that took leaves for Sun Country and sacrificed for them. And we, like I said, over $4 million. Well, everything that we have done, we're looking to get back. We're at the lowest paid in the ultra low carriers. And we're just looking to be with them.
Tanya, thank you for being here and for your work. And as I mentioned, you said in your notes that you've worked for over half of your life as a flight attendant for Sun Country Airlines. And in December, you completed 32 years of service. What does it mean to you to have been and to be a flight attendant for this company in particular?
Well, I have seen lots of changes with this company. I've rolled with all the punches, the bankruptcies, the change in ownership, leadership, time and time again. And we have been promised all along, our pockets are shallow right now. We cannot take care of you. We're going to take care of you in the next contract. And we just heard it constantly. And now we're going to hold their feet to the fire. They have deep pockets. They are making record profits quarter after quarter. They can afford to do better, and they need to do better.
What brought you into the industry, and how have you stayed in the industry so long? This is the personal side. Why is it that Tanya has been so committed to flying and serving as a flight attendant?
It's the lifestyle, 100%. Once you start doing this, the thought of doing a Monday through Friday job, 9 to 5, it's just out of the question. It's the ability to manipulate your schedule, to, you want to go on vacation, you can make it all happen. It's very flexible.
Same question to you, Elaine. How have you come to spend a career, a lifetime really, in the industry? And what has been, the rewarding part of it? I think we're talking about the challenge right now as well, but it's the challenge, it's the reward that makes the challenge worthwhile, I think. You can talk about that, if you will.
I came into becoming a flight attendant as my second career. I was an operations officer for a Twin City helicopter and airplane operator. We operated all through the country, and they decided to close down, and it was like, I love aviation. So I went to Sun Country. My niece at that time had worked at Sun Country. So I went and applied, and wow, like Tanya said, it's not a Monday through Friday job. And I had the flexibility. But I think I'm going to back up. I think the biggest thing for me is my coworkers. I love my coworkers. And you see some of those, comics about, yeah, you sit on the jump seat and you hear the life story of your coworker. But you know what? We get advice from our coworkers. We love our coworkers. We have a good time. And in that, we project that out to our passengers.
Mhm.
I mean, because we do enjoy our job. So, we give them a good service, I think. I hope that they do think that we give them a good service. But I think that's why I stay in it. I mean, I enjoy it. And right now, I am now Chief Union Steward. I've made a commitment to my members, the flight attendant members, and I'm going to hopefully give them my best and negotiate a good contract for all of us so they know they can stay with Sun Country for years to come, and Sun Country will take care of them. That's what we're hoping.
Well, listen, talking to you guys just reminds me that I wonder how you all feel with all the negative coverage of passenger misbehavior, because it's with social media now, you see so much of that. And I think that two things happen. One, people begin to see how difficult your job can be, right? And how important it is for you all to be both compassionate and level-headed and competent and trained and kind of unflappable, even in the most difficult of circumstances, because not only are you trying to make sure that each individual is cared for properly and respectfully, but you've got the lives of a whole bunch of people on your hands when you're in flight. It's a big responsibility. It's a huge responsibility. So I'm doing two things here. One, I'm acknowledging and wanting to give you credit as an ordinary flyer, as a passenger, so that when you guys think that people don't get it, I want you to know that as an ordinary guy, I get it. And I really, really appreciate the value that you bring to the lives that you touch every day working in that industry. It's important, it's critical. And if nobody else has told you that, I'm telling you now, I want you to hear it. I thank you. And I'm thanking you on behalf of millions of people who I believe feel the same way I feel.
Thank you, El.
Thank you.
We do appreciate that.
Yeah, I think we wear a lot of hats
What's
as
it-
flight attendants.
Yeah. Well, so it's saying that my goal today was so that you all can talk to people like me here on the radio and on internet, because I think that more of us want to support you because we treasure you and we value you. And so what is it that, the Al McFarlands can do? Maybe just being aware is one thing, but what else can we do to support you and workers, you in particular, but workers in general? Elaine, what do you think?
The public needs to have the knowledge of how we are paid. I mean, sometimes people look and say, well, they make a good hourly wage. Well, if you look at a 40-hour work person, they get paid for 40 hours. We don't get paid for 40 hours. We're on duty maybe 40 hours, but maybe we're only paid for 25 hours or 28 hours. We are only paid when that aircraft door closes. And then when it opens again, we're stopped being paid. We're only paid when we're up in the air. And I think one of our colleagues said, during boarding, she had to do CPR. Well, that's all unpaid. She's saving a life, but you're not getting paid for it. That's part of our job. So the public needs to be aware how we are paid. So when we're greeting people coming on and helping them with their bags or with their baby or their, mobility devices, that's all unpaid. We're doing that because it's part of our job. So that's why we need a better wage so we can continue to do that for everyone.
Tanya, what are your thoughts?
Elaine said it perfectly. I think a lot of the media coverage talks about, flight attendants making 21 to 50 bucks an hour, but they don't really realize, that it's not a 40-hour week. You're lucky. An average flight attendant is paid for about 80 hours a month. but that does equate to a full-time position. And we're putting in a lot more than 80 hours to get paid for that. So even though it seems like an inflated dollar amount per hour, either pay us from the time we check in until we check out, or give us a better hourly wage that reflects that there's a lot of unpaid hours.
I noticed there was a memo from the CEO of the company saying that the career span should be 5 years for an attendant. What's that about? I mean, to me, that sounds like it's fitting in and dog whistling to old stereotypes, right?
Absolutely.
About the benefit that a human being can bring to her or his workplace. And the stereotype is that you got to be 21 years old, and then retire at 25 or something like that, or go to the counter or something like that. I mean, am I wrong in questioning the intent of that observation by your CEO?
I don't see it as an age thing for him. I see it as what he's paying out. He doesn't want you to be a senior person. Tommy and I are senior. And he'd rather, and this is my own opinion, he has not said this, but he'd rather have the senior people gone because he's paying too much money for them. And we're not getting paid a lot.
Yeah.
No, I mean, the top flight attendants since 2018, they have not got 1 penny of an increase. If you're at the top of scale, you have received 0 increase. But again, you're paying them $50 an hour when you could be paying a new hire 21. So yeah, he does not put a lot of value on senior flight attendants.
What actions are ahead? What's the status of negotiations, Elaine? And when do you expect to deliver the value that you are seeking for your members?
Like I said, our first session was in December. We did give our proposal to the company, and it was a realistic proposal. And we haven't and our next session is not until February. And then Tanya, I'm sorry, Al, I'm sick and I'm going to start coughing. Tanya, can you take over, please?
Yep. So we, like Elaine said, in December, we came in with very realistic proposals. We focused directly on what we need in order to accept a deal. We didn't ask for the moon. We're just looking to get standard items that every other flight attendant has. Basically, our proposals pretty much center around economics. We're looking for a better wage. We're looking for a better 401k match. We do not get profit sharing, and we do not get a retirement pension at Sun Country. So, we're kind of on our own to save for retirement, and it makes it harder and harder when we are not negotiating in a timely manner. We depend on negotiating new contracts with new wage scales just to keep up with the cost of living. And typical flight attendant contract is 5 years. We've had 3 contracts since we unionized in 1999. Every one of them has doubled in duration just because the stall in negotiations.
Okay. Well, listen, guys, thank you so much for being here. Again, is there anything that you want people to know or do to support you? Phone calls, letters, show up, travel, fly. What do you want your neighbors, our neighbors, to do to show their support to the flight attendants?
If they could write the CEO and say that we deserve a contract, and we deserve a contract sooner rather than later.
Elaine Rishovd, Tanya DeVito, thank you so much for being here. Elaine is the Chief Union Steward for the flight attendants at Sun Country, and Tanya DeVito, like Elaine, is a long-term person in the industry. You guys, thank you so very much, and keep us connected for finding out how things materialize in your favor and on behalf of your colleagues and the workers at Sun Country. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Elle.
Thank
All
you
right.
for having us.
All right,
Yes.
take care.
Take care.
I'm Al McFarland. This is The Conversation with Al McFarland. As I promised, a great conversation. I'm so glad to have them on the show. And, I think I'm thinking aloud on behalf of all of you listening here on KFAI and all of you who are around the country, around the world through the social media networks that we're streaming to. But I think that we all have a sense of appreciation and respect for the people who serve us in the flight attendant space and other spaces like that. And I think that we all support them, and we want them to be treated with fairness and dignity and equity, and to have their value acknowledged and compensated properly. And as a passenger, that's what I want, is I want employees of the airplane to feel good about being there. And I don't want them to feel like it's a drag and that they are not respected, because that's not in my interest. My self-interest is in their joy and their fair compensation and their sense of both fulfillment and completion in doing the important work they do. If you feel the same way, think about it, talk to your friends about it, and call somebody up and say, you know what, we need to make sure that our friends, our sisters and brothers in your industry are getting a good deal. Well, let me move on and bring my next guest in today. And this is a person that I haven't met before, but I'm so excited to meet and talk about her important work. Deneal Trueblood Lynch is a playwright who says she wants to write about what she knows, and she's tapped into her lived experience and situations that some people would find very difficult to talk about. She says she uses universal trauma to create a platform where conversation and healing begin. She wrote a play. The play is called Secrets. She wrote it as a student at Metropolitan State University, and it won a playwriting contest with a workshop and a reading at Park Square Boss Theater in downtown St. Paul, I think. She says Secrets is my lived experience that tells the story of spiraling events that culminated in an assault, incarceration, and a redemption. Well, I could read more, but I'm going to ask her to talk and take it from there in presenting herself. Sister Deneal Trueblood Lynch, welcome to the Conversation with Al McFarland. Sister, Happy New Year to you as well.
Thank
How
you.
are you?
I am well. Happy New Year's to you as well.
Well, take it from where I left off. Talk about your life, your story, and how that is presented in this play that you've written.
So, well, it all goes back to my childhood and dealing with a lot of traumatic things that took place, and how I carried that trauma with me. I hid that trauma, and I started seeing how hiding that trauma was affecting me growing into, myself, growing into a woman, dealing with society. I saw that there were a lot of roadblocks from these traumas, to the point to where, sometimes trauma follows you, and you gotta realize that it is the trauma, and you have to find, either community help, society help, or self-help. Well, some things came up, and that trauma resurfaced in my life, and I reacted. And through that reaction, it landed up in an assault. I was sentenced to prison time here in Minnesota. And while in prison, I had a lot of time, to think about just myself, self-healing, where am I going to take myself, afterwards? And I knew, being, an older, person, that I would, have to be contending with younger the younger people in society as far as jobs, as far as, where am I going? Because I could not continue doing what I was doing now that I had this, criminal background piece attached to me.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had been out of school for quite some time, 15, 20 years, and I said, I think I'm going to need to, go to school and try to, grab something so I can use as something to, start anew.
Mm-hmm.
And so I entered, I registered for school. I first went to Minneapolis College, transferred over to Metro State University. And it was there that I, during an elective class, the instructor was like, hey, where have you been? And my immediate response was, in prison.
Does he know? Yeah.
That same laugh you just did is the laugh that he gave me. He was like, "Oh,
yeah."
And so it pretty much worked it out. And he said, "No, you have a natural talent." And so then I got hit and bit with the theater bug, and I'm grateful that I did. So I went through, the required classes, graduated from Minneapolis College and Metro State with a AA, a BA, and theater. And part of graduation was that capstone everyone has to, partake in. And so I had no idea what, my capstone would be. And I said, well, I'm going to write about something that I know. I'm going to write about what other people have, inputted, as far as trauma, because this is something that is generational. It has no name. It has no face. It's in every culture. Everyone can, grab a piece of it. They can relate to it, whether it's a family member, a friend, themselves. And so this is one of the things that has always been swept underneath the rug. And I wanted to talk about it because this here is a secret that I have been carrying for all of my life.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to do something. My thing was, I kept saying, if I can just reach one person, then that's my purpose, And so I wrote this, my lived experience, and I had an instructor call me, because it was my capstone. And she called me, she was like, you have an imagination. And I'm sitting there thinking, here we go again. No one believes me.
Mm-hmm.
So I sat in her office and I told her, I said, I really did do prison time. And I gave her my OID number, and she was shocked.
Yeah.
She was, I'm not sure, she was more shocked about I had been to prison or more shocked that I am sitting here and I am telling her about my trauma.
Wow.
So let's just say, the capstone that I presented to her was in a play form. And of course, I've got an A on it, But
so let me stop you for a second. So I don't want to get lost in language.
Mm-hmm.
You use the phrase capstone.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that I know what that means. So take a minute.
Okay. So capstone is like your final your final grade in college.
Okay.
And you have to have, if you're a medical student, maybe it's a exam, patient exam that you must do. As far as theater, it's, you've got to complete like a play. You got to know lighting, you got to know sound, or you got to be able to put it in words in a book so that, you could pass it off to your instructors and you're graded by this.
Mm,
That is
okay.
your last performance, before you step into your bachelor's degree.
Okay. And so your capstone then was the play Secrets. So go ahead. I interrupted you.
Yes.
I have some questions. I'm enjoying this flow though. But go ahead.
and so yes. So after getting a final grade on that, I entered. COVID hit. Right after I got a workshop from Metro State University where we did a theater reading of Secrets. We had a couple of days, 4 days, but we were shut down after 2 days because COVID hit. And then when it hit, all the theaters shut down.
Mm-hmm.
And so for the 2 days, we had sold out. There was no seats. People wanted to hear about Secrets. And so, we performed it. And then the response that I got from the audience members that were there on that Thursday and Friday was unbelievable. I was getting a lot of messages, email messages saying, hey, we got to do something with Secrets. You can't let Secrets continue to be secrets, because now our kids are locked in and unseen. And a lot of them are, with their perpetrators,
Mm-hmm.
So teachers were not able to, a lot of times teachers are your first line of defense,
Mm-hmm.
when trauma is happening at home.
Mm-hmm.
They can see how students withdraw. So I had a lot of teachers reaching out saying, hey, we got to do something. You got to do something. And so for the entire lockdown, I edited, I reworked it, and then I started submitting my play to competitions. And that year, I believe I submitted it to 22 or 23 different competitions. And so I kept getting, no, sorry, at this time, we're looking for something different, or sorry, maybe, you should try this here competition. So roughly around 22 no's, I was fine with it, but I still wanted to tell my story.
Mm-hmm.
And so one day I was laying there and something said, check your email. Check my email, and the first word I see is congratulations.
Wow.
And then the next words I read is from the Kennedy Center. I'm like, congratulations for what?
Mm-hmm.
And my play had made the regionals.
Mm-hmm.
And I had got an invite to go over to Iowa for the competition of one-act plays. And so excited, I got in touch with Metro State to see if they wanted to be a part of it, because you had to have had university affiliation. So
Mm-hmm.
I was glad they were on board. And so we went and took first place in the regionals
Wow.
of 2023.
Wow.
And yes, and got a invite to attend the nationals in Washington, D.C. But because of funding, we were not able to reach that level.
Mm-hmm.
But my play was sent in on a national level and was read by a university that had the means to make it to Washington.
Mm-hmm.
And so we took second seed in nationals as well.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you. So yes, Secrets, I've gotten a lot of feedback. I did fundraise, and I did present Secrets at the Capri Theater in North Minneapolis. North Minneapolis will always have, a spot in my heart for me. North Minneapolis is where my family migrated to when we moved to Minnesota.
From where?
From Louisiana.
Okay.
So there's a lot of roots, in North Minneapolis, a lot of trauma that I wanted to address, a lot of the childhood trauma that I know a lot of people, everywhere still, suffer from it. But I know a great deal of people in North Minneapolis that still holds onto those secrets. So I wanted to create a platform for those who normally wouldn't have a voice, in their trauma because of, they're still dealing with family issues, family secrets, family dysfunctions. And so I presented there. And after every reading, every production, we have what we call a Q&A, where the audience is able to ask the actors as well as myself, whatever they want to ask or how it affected them seeing this, and we usually have like people from different professional backgrounds, mental health, sexual trauma, childhood, advocacies there as well. I also my part-time job is with Goodwill Easter Seals. So they're there to, aid in that talking of incarceration and what comes next as well. So I have like people in the audience that, extend their professional services to the audience for questions that I or my cast, can ask or, would rather them, take part in.
That sounds amazing. So talk about the broad sweep of secrets. Is it a book with several themes, or is it one point that it digs deeply into and explores, impacts? Tell me about it.
So Secrets is, once again, based on my lived experience. So it's the community. You have the neighbors who's always outside watching, and just so happens that this here community was a community of people who have lived on this block, on this particular block, from anywhere from 10 years to 50 years. So you have the pastor who lives on the block, you have the guy who's always, been sweet on you living on the block. You have, the home and gardening people who always has visitors coming to look at their house, you have the single parent, you have, the Asians, the Hmongs on the blocks that just blend in, so that there's no race on our block. We all look out for each other. So you have that aspect of the community, and then there's the aspect of, the mental health part of it, because there's children involved. There's also that sexual trauma from the children, and that carries on from, the littlest people to the teenagers, to the adults, and how it affects them. You have the assault that happens where you are now inviting the law, the government into the block as well, and everyone has their opinion, once they're looking inside your lived experience. You have the piece of the court systems, there's mentions of the court system. There's a scene of the court system, as far as being a Black woman who's never been arrested and never had to enter into a courtroom, and the aspect of how she felt and what went on. You have the the family as well. There's pieces of the family's trauma tied into here, and then there's even pieces of like society, like the neighbors that are in this play. They give a piece of their secret as well, from the older to the younger. And one of the neighbors, she talks about mental health and how she's never dealt with mental health. She thought that was something that, the newer or the younger generation is now trying to entwine into, her ways, so she talks about that, there's like physical abuse from another neighbor, she tells her secrets, and these, all of these things just tie into what trauma is, and no one wants to talk about it, and I want to be that person who starts that platform.
Listen, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for having the courage to turn your experience into light, to illuminate the path for all of us, and to take away the stigma, the shame, right? The sense of failure and the sense of cover up that our families and our neighbors and neighborhoods feel. So I applaud you for taking the position, for having discovered the gift of writing in you, and for your willingness to bring that gift forward in the form of this play. What else are you working on, number one? And when can people either buy or get a copy of or see a reading in the future?
So I am in collaboration with Women's Press Magazine. They have an event April 13th. It's called, what is it called? Women's Press Badass Minnesotans.
Okay.
And yeah, and that event is April 13th, and I will be doing a just a small sample reading of secrets, and that will be, I'm pretty sure it will be announced again in their upcoming papers, newspaper reports as well. And that again is April 13th, and it's at the Uritanian Society over South Minneapolis. As far as being able to view or purchase or fund, I will have all of that information up on my website, and that is at DenealTrueblood.com.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Let me tell you, I want to invite you back for one of our Friday programs. We have a program on Friday that we call the Healing Circle. And it's, you might know Dr. Bravada Garrett Akinsanya. Dr. B, she's well known, but she's a therapist, and she and Dr. Oliver Williams, who is a social worker, and I invite people in to talk about mental health. And I'm sure we want to talk to you about mental health as well.
Did you say Dr. B?
Dr. B, we call her Dr. B, but her name is Dr. Bravada Garrett Akinsanya. But Dr. B.
I heard of her before, and while incarcerated, I was trying to send an invite out to her.
You know,
So you are muted. Thank you.
take a minute and go ahead and talk, Deneal. Go ahead.
So yes, I tried to reach out to Dr. B while incarcerated. I was trying to get her out there for a Black History program that I was trying to set up at Shakopee, but I was never able to get in touch with anyone. And then it was a lot of people saying that they probably wouldn't do it because there was a lot of controversy with what the women were doing versus what the men were able to do while incarcerated. So I kept her name in the back of my mind, and now that you just mentioned it, it just brought back that time when I was trying to reach out to see if she would be willing to come out to the prison to talk to women about mental health issues, because at that time I noticed that there were a lot of mental health issues within that community, that it would have been so helpful if she would have been able to come out and attend it at that time.
Deneal, thank you so much. We'll stay in touch. Okay, we'll make it happen.
Yes.
I'm Al McFarland. This is The Conversation with Al McFarland. As I promised, a robust conversation. This certainly is that. Well, the balance of the program continues in the same vein, I think, of intensity, of relevance, of importance. I'm pleased to bring Dr. Stephanie Barrage. I have to get her name the right way. Dr. Stephanie, welcome to the program. You tell me the right way. Barrage?
You said it correctly. Barrage is the correct way. So
okay. Well, cool. Happy New Year to you. How you doing?
Happy New Year. How are you doing?
I am really, really, really well. As we were speaking, the Center Point service guy came, so I'll be doing really well, hopefully in an hour or so. But, that's Minnesota, right? It's Minnesota.
I understand. That's right.
Keep rolling with it. Well, talk about the important events that we did.
There's going to be one guy coming here also.
We're talk about the important event with the state celebrating the life and work of Dr. Martin Luther King. You're in the governor's office.
I am.
You're the chief equity officer in our state. Talk about that as well.
I will and can. So we'll start with Martin Luther King Jr. first. So I was very fortunate that my office started to work with the Council for the Martin Luther King Jr. program. This is 38 years here for the state, which is great. And so when the council met, we actually started to have conversations around what did we want to do to be different, how do we want to grow this? I mean, this is always to be able to celebrate, let's be honest, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Is huge just in and of itself. But we always want to make sure that we're meeting our community right where they are and in this moment in space and time. And so the council came forward and said, we're going to do something. We'd like to do some things a little differently. And we decided that we were going to add days to the event. So we actually started on Thursday with the first annual Achieve the Dream conference. And it was amazing. We had Dr. Yeruhu Williams, who was our keynote speaker. He was amazing. And he does a lot of research on Dr. King. He's actually on the History Channel. He's many different areas of work. And then we actually had a panel that was awesome. And that panel was made up of people from U.S. Bank. We had people from U.S. Bank. We had people from many different spaces. We had Children's, James Burrows was the moderator from Children's. He did a phenomenal job. So it was just awesome. We had, then the next day, people from Best Buy. It literally was just quite a few people. We had Dr. Angela Springer. She's the Senior Diversity Officer for the Carlson School of Management. We had John Hardy with Best Buy. We had Tiffany Daniels. She's with the Managing Director for the Minnesota Business Coalition for Racial Equity. We had Bukata Hayes, the Vice President and Chief Equity Officer for Blue Cross Blue Shield. So right there, we did, and Reba Domaninsky, who was the Chief Social Responsibility Officer and President for U.S. Bank Foundation. So it was right there. It was just amazing. Then we moved into the next day because I am an educator. I have been a teacher, principal, superintendent, you name it, deputy commissioner for the state of Minnesota. And I don't do anything without touching to the kids, seriously, like without working with our students. So then on Friday, we had a youth summit. We had students from across the state, and we had two sites. One was at the Science Museum, and then the second site was at 3M Innovation Center. And it was, again, the kids came in, they worked around STEM. They had other corporate sponsors or people that were there to help them and to talk to them about what does the field of STEM look like. And STEM is science, technology, so all that. And we wanted to make sure that they had connections, and they did. It was amazing. And then on Saturday, we had the career fair. Now, I got my numbers back, and I am so happy because our career fair had we had 1,177 job seekers, and we had about 235 people that signed up the day of.
Okay.
So one of the largest that we had, because we have over 650 jobs across the state, and we want to make sure that people have access to the jobs. So we have every state agency that was there with people to actually talk to them about the jobs, what the jobs look like, what do they need. And, this is a big deal because the governor had signed into executive order that in many of the jobs, you no longer need a 4-year degree. And
Right.
so this was helping to increase the level of jobs for people within our state. So that was, great. And we had people at the door waiting to get in. And I literally at the 30-minute mark to say we are ending in 30 minutes, people were still running in the door trying to get in as fast as they could. So I'm really happy about that. And so let me tell you why that's important.
Yeah.
Because Dr. King, as you know, was about jobs. He really was about people having access to jobs. So we felt this was important to, again, tie this to Dr. King and what he represented. And so then we moved to Sunday. Well, Saturday, we also have a day of service. So we really asked people across the state to be of service because, again, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s life was about service. He gave of his life to make sure that people in the movement, that we took care of people and he took care of people. And so we wanted to make sure that we had service at the forefront of the celebration. And so then we moved to Sunday, which is where we had our Day of Hope. And so clergy across the state would give service or conversation, sermons, and talking of hope in our community, because Dr. King had hope for our world and our community. And I think that is the one thing I've always picked up from him, is that representing his life, you can never give up hope, because when you lose hope, you just lose the sight of fighting for what you still have to fight for. And so then we got to Monday, where we had our flagship event, which closed us out. And we had multiple people. We had Dr. Pastor McDavid, who was our MC. We had the fellowship choir. We had Fair Crystal students that performed. They danced. They performed their choir. They were amazing. And then we had our hometown two people, which was Caroline Wanga, and we had Houston White Jr., which I always say Houston was a former student of mine. I was a teacher at Northeast Minneapolis Middle School, and he was one of my students. So it was great. And then we had awards for our champions of change, and that was just amazing. And so I am very pleased that we tried to honor Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. in his birthday. And think about it, he would have been 95 in 2024.
Well, let me just ask you to sit on this whole question of why it's so important that we do this. Because I think it's critical. And sometimes people will get cynical or get jaded or get, tired. And they say, like it's not important, but it is important. Talk about it, Dr. Barrage.
Let me tell you what was probably, and there were, let me also say this, and this is why it is important. So we also had Dallas Downey, who was one of the moderators with me for the fireside chat with Caroline Wanga and Houston White. So this is important. So this was a multi-generational stage. We've got a 16-year-old who's doing major community work in the community. You have as I said, Houston was my student, so I'm going to date myself a little bit. You have Caroline Wanga, who is there. So we've got a multi-generational group that's there. This is what Houston said when we were talking about why the dream is so important. He said when he was a kid, this is a quote from him. He said, I would stay up at night. He said, and actually it stressed me because I am hearing about Dr. Martin Luther King. And what I have to process is, here's a man who was fighting for us, but yet and still he is assassinated. He said, so I would stay up at night. He said, and really it was a struggle, because then when you get to the day of his birthday and to celebrate, he said, really, when you have to manage, here is someone that we are celebrating, but yet and still this man was assassinated for his beliefs and fighting for other people. When Houston said that, I literally went, this is why it is so important, because he said as he managed that as a young man, it wasn't until he became an adult that he really started to move into and understand. And I'm not going to say just understand, but to really celebrate. Because I'm going to use this comment. When we live as a child, we understand as a child. But it is when we become an adult and when we become a man or a woman that we put away childish things and we start to understand what we really are called to work within. And so that to me was I am so grateful and thankful that we still celebrate Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. even today, and why it is so important, because there may be things that we process as a child, but it still works with us as we go into an adulthood, and what the meaning of it is to us as we still grow in this space. So it cannot stop. It has to continue so that we also prepare the next generation to understand how important it is. And that's one of the comments that Dr. Yeru Williams made, that people talk about history repeating itself, but it's not about it repeating itself. It's the echo. It's the echo. And we have to make sure that people understand the echo of space.
I had a chance to see Dr. King in the airport in Atlanta on, I think it must have been April, I forgot which day it was. I was leaving Jacksonville with a layover to see my buddies at Morehouse, where I had gone to school.
All right.
Coming back
I
to
see
Minnesota.
you, HBCU.
And he was on his way to Memphis. And I didn't want to speak to him at first, though I had marched with him earlier. But by this time, I'd gotten involved indirectly as a student at SNCC and militant, active, and I questioned the value of his message of peace. But I said, let me not be stupid and go say hi to Dr. King. And I did. He didn't know me from anybody. I'm just a kid, 19 or 18, 17 years old. And he was just very gracious and healing in his word and his demeanor. And I just remember that he was on his way to his death, and that had an impact on me. Let me do this. I want to invite you back because I want to keep following the important work that you're doing. I think you and the governor and the lieutenant governor and the cabinet are doing phenomenal things. And I want to make sure that the platforms that I have are fully activated in support of creating the vision of an inclusive state that you all are committed to. Before I close, I want to bring back Tanya DeVito and Elaine Rishovd just to have a final thought. And we do this a lot just to bring the message forward. Tanya and Elaine, again, thank you guys for being here. And as you've listened to Dr. Stephanie and reflecting what you're doing now, any final thoughts on today's program? Tanya, I'll go with you first.
It's awesome. Awesome. You are totally awesome.
Elaine, comments. How do we tie your work together and this information?
I wanted to clarify something when you said in the beginning, Al, is about a strike. And we are governed by the Railway Labor Act. And there is many steps to go before we even get to a strike. The first step is mediation, which we are in. If that breaks down, the mediator feels that we cannot continue, they can release us. And then we have to ask permission from the National Mediation Board. So that this is a long process. So I don't want to alarm the public that we are on the verge of a strike, because we're not.
Well, thank you for coming back to clarify that. We want people to be clear. And we still want people to support you, to know what the issues are, and to support you as valuable contributors to community. Well, Dr. Stephanie, Elaine, Tanya, and our previous guest, she's gone, I believe. But thank all of you for being here. And thank you here at KFAI and you on social media for listening. We'll see you next time. I'm Al McFarland. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.